Coming up on the show, the nation's capital may be at a standstill, but your 401k is not. Ahead, we're going to look into why the current government shutdown could still move your portfolio and what it could mean for long-term growth. Also, the roads may be clear after rush hour, but for some, that's when it gets really dangerous. We're going to dig into why Atlanta streets are getting a little bit deadlier. And from joggers to developers, everyone loves the Atlanta Beltline, but however, find out why transit advocates say it's time to add rail to the trail right now. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to share their takes on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. But let's start off with the government shutdown. It is now Day 8 of the federal government shutdown, and here's what is expected today. The Senate is expected to vote on rival proposals, each with hopes of forcing a breakthrough. Republicans are pushing that they are calling a clean continuing resolution and Democratic plan with several amendments. Meanwhile, White House officials will press their interpretation that furloughed workers are not automatically entitled to back pay unless Congress explicitly appropriates it. For the public, the hardest hit at the nation's airports, FAA facilities across the country are already short-staffed, and flight delays, congestion, and safety pressures are likely to worsen today. All right, so we're also looking at Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is breaking with her own party over health care. And that's one of the key items that forced this shutdown, or at least triggered the shutdown. In a long post on X, Greene said that this is becoming a personal issue, stating, quote, "When the tax credits expire this year, my own adult children's insurance premiums for 2026 are going to double, along with the wonderful families and hardworking people in my district."
Because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, as Marjorie Taylor Greene herself has acknowledged, tens of millions of people are about to experience dramatically increased health insurance costs. How is that acceptable?
All right, let's get some more perspective on this with Republican strategist and frequent panelist member on the Georgia Vote, Mark Roundtree. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Chesley. Good morning.
Good morning to you. All right, let's start with the big picture here. We heard Greene's stance. It's isolated or robust, stating that the broader thinking of Republicans on the politics behind Obamacare. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think reasonable people can conclude that Obamacare has been a financial disaster for the country. It is causing premiums to rise dramatically now, and those premiums get paid either by the taxpayers or the individuals. So this is sort of taking the veil off of how expensive Obamacare has now become. It also has resulted in a lot of families not being able to get the doctors they want. So I think there is a lot of support for replacing Obamacare, maybe even among both political parties, though I don't know that Democrats would want to phrase it that way. But I think there are going to be changes over the course of the next few years in this.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I think it's what inarticulately Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, mm-hmm. is that this is a broken system. She doesn't have a current solution to it, which is odd because I think a lot of Republicans have proposed a lot of different options. So I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen what's her alternative other than more tax credits, but she hasn't really addressed that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you feel like statements like this complicate negotiations when the party is trying to project unity during the shutdown?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't help. She's essentially taking the role of someone that she never liked, and that is John McCain. She has taken the role of the person who walks up to the voting booth at the last minute and pushes the button no, and that was John McCain back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Obamacare was sort of revalidated by Congress when the Republican proposal failed. Maybe it was 2014, 10 years ago. So yeah, it does complicate things, and that's true. Another odd thing about it is that for whatever reason she chose to use kind of a curse word in her X post. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how in this country we got to the point where elected officials are having to use foul language in order to convey their thoughts. There's something wrong with the culture when that is just a routine situation.
We're finding, obviously, we see the Democrats using the shutdown to demand extensions of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Do you think Green is helping them out with this?
Well, she is, but you know, she's in a different case. And here's I think an important question to ask. Why are her children on Obamacare when she put $400,000 into her political campaign to get elected? What is wrong with that? Something is wrong. Why are her kids on Obamacare? She had 2 houses, one in Roswell, Georgia, and one in her district. How is someone with that much wealth, why are her family members on Obamacare, which was never intended to be a replacement for anybody except people who really needed it? So I got to question what's going on here.
Well, she's framing it as a fight between America only, and spending on foreign aid. Do you think that's going to resonate with the GOP base, or is dividing it?
Well, she continues to hit on Israel, on Muslims, on Mexicans, on Ukraine. She has all of these boogeymen, and some, there may be some genuine issues with some of these things, but to compare it to whether or not you're going to vote for just tens and tens of billions of dollars of subsidies on Obamacare is a rather, I don't know, it's kind of a stretch. I think most people looked at that and thought, what's going on here? Are you using these issues as red herrings as opposed to legitimate reasons to go in and do the real work of government? And I think people would like to see their congressmen doing the real work of government. I think a lot of conservatives are getting tired of these antics where we have people that complain a lot but don't actually do anything.
So with this statement and what's going on now, the Republicans facing that pressure to deliver on results, could this be the breaking point? Could this lead to a breaking point?
Well, I think with Republicans, the break has already happened. You will probably ultimately get a handful of Republicans supporting the extension of the tax credits so they can run back to the district and tell everybody that they stood up to Donald Trump and, you know, they're moderates and maybe politically in some of those districts, maybe New York districts, it'll be helpful. But I think most of the Republican Party has now moved definitely away from Obamacare and they want a replacement. And I think the only institution that's going to be able to actually offer a replacement is going to be the president. The president has to lead to ultimately to come up with a big picture replacement for this. Congress would have no practical way to do it. We can say all day long that it's Congress's fault, and maybe it is, but all day long. But that's 435 people in the House with 435 different plans. They're never going to centrally come up with a solution. It's going to take somebody who decides that they want to fix this problem. And right now, we don't have that.
Gotcha. All right, Mark Roundtree, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your insight today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, you're watching The Take, folks. We're back right after this. All right, let's find out what we can expect on this 8th day of the government shutdown with NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. And Alice, we started out the show with some comments from Marjorie Taylor Greene, her comments on health care, breaking from the GOP base. But has the president responded to this? Is he listening to what she's saying?
Yeah, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a really interesting test case in terms of lawmakers who are able to kind of step away from the Republican Party and still maintain pretty strong ties, at least up to this point. This is not the first time that she's kind of stepped out of line with what the party line is in general. I'm thinking about the war on Ukraine, when she said that there needed to be some more support there. Gaza as well. She's referenced the famine in Gaza. And so she has said publicly more than once that she, is here to stand for her constituents, for her beliefs, and that if that means going against what the party line is, that she's going to do that. Now, President Trump has to this point, I think, had a good degree of tolerance for that. She's also consistently maintained her support for President Trump, and they've long had a pretty strong relationship. So it'll be interesting to continue to track how she walks that line and how the president responds. And in this instance in particular, this is something that, certainly Republicans want full unity on, trying to pin the blame for the shutdown on the Democrats. So it could be a little bit trickier one, depending how far she's willing to go.
Yeah. All right. Another big headline is this back pay, right? The president is floating the idea of not giving federal workers that back pay when the government reopens. But isn't the back pay protected by law?
It is. There was a law passed not too long ago that guarantees that workers, federal workers who are furloughed or who work without pay during a shutdown, that they will be repaid afterward. President Trump, though, is seeming to indicate that he thinks that may not apply to furloughed workers. There's already been discussion that they want to be sure that troops, for instance, and other essential workers who are having to work without pay right now, that they get their pay back. The president said he's going to make sure military members get every single cent that they're owed. But he's suggesting that that may not apply to all furloughed workers who are home, who are not working and not being paid right now, certainly through no choice of their own. The president said it would depend on who you're talking about, and that, he's spoken about, in fact, eliminating a number of jobs during this shutdown. So this kind of seems to go into that same pot of, he said that for the most part, we're going to take care of our people, but he said that there are people that, in his words, he didn't think deserve to be taken care of, and that he said they would be taken care of in a different way, potentially suggesting those could be the same people that he might be considering on the chopping block. Yeah,
I asked you this yesterday. I'm asking you again today. Is there any signs of any movement?
So I think what's interesting is that there have been some internal discussions among Republicans that seem to be signaling that it's less a question of if they will address the question of these Obamacare insurance subsidies, preventing premiums from spiking, doubling in some instances. Less a question of if and a question of when. It seems to be becoming a little bit more politically apparent that that issue does need to be addressed. But whether that happens in enough time for Democrats to say we can reopen the government is still an open question. We do know, we've heard from some lawmakers like Democratic Senator Tim Kaine that there are some discussions going on between individual members across party lines, but to this point, not between the party leadership that really gives this a green light or red light on reopening.
All right, get ready. I may ask you the same question again tomorrow. Thanks a lot, Alice. Really appreciate it.
I'll be here.
All right. Don't go anywhere, folks. Plenty of stories coming up for you right after the break. This is The Take. Don't go anywhere. Well, the government shutdown doesn't just affect federal workers. It can also rattle your retirement account as well. Experts say even a short stall can ripple through markets and shake investors' confidence. Here with us now to help ease some of our financial nerves is April Reed Cruz. She's the CEO of Reed Financial Group with offices in Suwanee and also in Snellville. Welcome back to the show.
Good to see you again, Chesley.
All right. What do you say to clients who see red arrows on their retirement accounts and start to panic? How do you help them get some perspective on this thing?
Well, interestingly, so far in this shutdown, we're not seeing a lot of that. I think there was a lot of anticipation as the government prepared to shut down, that there was a lot of concern about market volatility, and we really haven't seen a lot of that thus far. But when we do, the best course of action is to not use emotion and opinion to drive decision making. Make some prudent adjustments if possible, but don't make reactionary adjustments that can hurt you in the long run.
So they're seeing what's happening now, and they're coming to you saying, hey, let's change this up, let's change that. And you're telling them, hey, wait on this thing, right? Just wait it out a little bit.
There are a lot of great studies out there about this, about investor behavior and human behavior, where if we had a crystal ball, then what we would want to do is buy low and sell high at the exact perfect time. But what human emotion does when it drives our investing is exactly the opposite. People tend to buy when things are euphoric and they're comfortable, and they tend to sell when there's panic and fear. And there are a lot of studies that show the long-term impact that can have on a retirement plan. It's very difficult sometimes to remove the emotion and the opinion, especially when we're in times like we are right now. So having a strategy, understanding what your specific steps and what your specific protections are in place when there is market volatility is paramount in making sure that you don't fall into that trap, especially for the majority of people we work with who are retired or preparing to retire. There has to be a plan before things like this happen, and not a reaction, a rather proactiveness.
April, we've seen shutdowns before. Do they leave any long-lasting scars on retirement savings, or does the market kind of bounce back quickly during these times?
Typically we see a good bounce back. And, again, a lot of it is surrounding fear and what might happen. We saw the same type of market movement based off of fear when everything started transpiring with tariffs earlier this year, and then it bounced back from there. So a lot of what we see is that emotional reaction in the stock market, not something that is a fundamental issue where we're going to see extended volatility. So in all likelihood, that's what we'll see.
Yeah. Is this a good time for buying opportunities in solid, undervalued companies, or should people just wait for more stability to take place?
Making major adjustments to your portfolio when there are short-term situations going on is typically not the best course of action, but it can't hurt to look for those buying opportunities. They always exist. And sometimes when we have anomalies like this, a shutdown, maybe it's one that'll be more extended than what we've seen in recent years. We don't know how long this will last, but it can't hurt to look at what those opportunities might be and make sure that you don't miss them.
All right. Tell me again, what's the key takeaway for everybody out there kind of shaking in their boots about this thing?
Well, just have a plan, have a professional that you can talk to is very valuable. Somebody who can hold you accountable to making sure that you're not making emotional decisions that could have long-term impact, and really sticking to your strategies that you're confident in. If you're not confident in your strategies, maybe it's a good time to start to assess what adjustments that you need to make so that you can be more comfortable moving forward.
April Reed-Cruz, thanks so much for the insight today. Really appreciate that. You're settling a lot of fear and anxiety. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you.
All right, take care. All right, plenty more stories for you coming up, folks. Don't go anywhere. This is The Take, and we're back right after this. All right, you're looking at the tarmac right there at Hartsfield-Jackson, where all appears to be going smooth right now. About 2,500 flights arrive and depart each day from the world's busiest airport, seemingly with the greatest of ease. That was not the case last week at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Two regional jets from Atlanta-based Delta Airlines made contact on the taxiway, with the wing of one plane striking the fuselage of another. This left significant damage to both aircrafts. One flight attendant had a knee injury, and none of the other passengers were hurt. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating this incident. While this latest incident at LaGuardia ended without major injury, it's another reminder of how critical coordination and communication, especially on the ground at some of the world's busiest airports. We welcome in the former NTSB investigator and aviation expert, Greg Feith, back to the show. Welcome back.
Hey, Chesley, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Greg. When we see close calls like this, what does that tell us about the safety in and around America's airports right now?
Well, right now we got a couple of issues going on, of course, with the shutdown and the controller shortage. That is presenting its own problems. But with regard to the on-ground collision at LaGuardia, communication is key here. And when you have a busy airport like Atlanta, like LaGuardia, Chicago, New York, doesn't matter, it's a choreographed dance between air traffic controllers and pilots, and it's really effective communication. Unfortunately, because of the complexity and the fact that LaGuardia, unlike Atlanta, is smaller as far as stature, you have runways and taxiways that are closer. Unfortunately, unless you have clear communication and pilots understand exactly what that controller wants, you're going to have issues like this.
Greg, is it just me, or are we hearing more about these incidents taking place? I mean, it seems like this year alone, we've heard a lot about these close calls or even some of these accidents taking place. Or is it now just getting more attention, or has it been happening all along and we just didn't know about it?
No, it's the spotlight is now on aviation because about the last 5 years, we've ramped up all of these events. And then, of course, at the beginning of the year, with all of that run of accidents starting in DCA with the mid-air collision, and then we had Philadelphia, and then we had 10 fatal up in Alaska. All of a sudden, now the spotlight is back on aviation, and on top of that, with the controller shortage, and of course now the shutdown, I mean, it's gone from spotlight to sunlight. I mean, everything in aviation is being scrutinized, and everybody's got a cell phone, everybody's got a story, and so yeah, there's a lot of attention now drawn to these types of events. But we still have the safest aviation system in the world, given the fact that we're running 45 to 50,000 aircraft operations in a 24-hour period.
Yeah. You mentioned the shutdown. How big of a role is that going to have on the overall picture?
Right now, it's a real concern. With the call-outs, whether they are real or in protest by air traffic controllers, creating shortages in major city airports, that's going to have an adverse effect on the traveling public. And unfortunately, we all have short patience. And I always say time to spare, go by air. And that really is proving now, because we do have staffing shortages. We are going to have towers that are closed down. We are going to have slowdowns as far as departures and arrivals. They'll slow aircraft down in trail, en route, to try and not saturate the system, especially at airports where there are shortages of controllers. So there's a lot going on, Chesley, in aviation right now, but the FAA is trying to manage it to maintain the highest levels of safety.
Talked about the shortage. What does that look like for us? And a shortage along with people calling out sick, does that mean less planes take off now, or how does that work?
Yeah, once we've seen this basically the last several days at major city airports, including here in Denver where I am, where we had ground stops. So you may have an airplane that's supposed to take off at 12 noon, but now they've ground stopped it till 12:30, 12:45, even 1 o'clock. What they're trying to do is slow the arrival rates and break up those high density times where you have peak flights, morning and evening, where you have a high concentration of flights, because they may not have enough controllers to handle those peaks. So they're trying to spread that traffic out. You may have less flights going into particular airports, and then of course the FAA, instead of having maybe 3 miles in trail as far as en route, you'll have them 5 miles, which means less airplanes going into and out of certain airports.
Yeah, Greg, I got about 30 seconds left. Talk to the people real quick about incidents like this with the pending shutdown and the shortages and everything. What you want people to know about flying?
I think right now it looks disastrous in the eyes of some people, that especially as the traveling public gets ramped up for holiday travel coming up. Again, you got to pre-plan, and you have to really have patience. Right now, it's not the airline's fault. It's not the FAA's fault. The fact is with this shutdown, we are not having a throughput of trained controllers coming through the academy and that kind of stuff. Plus, we've lost a number of instructors as well. So the shutdown does not help, but safety isn't compromised. Yes, we do have these events like at LaGuardia, but again, the whole system depends on communication, a choreographed dance between air traffic controllers and pilots. They're the two entities that really keep aviation safe here in the United States.
Got it. Greg Fife, thanks so much. Really appreciate your insight for today.
Good to see you.
All right. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. This is The Take. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. Homeownership can be a major milestone, but for many Latino families, it can also come with some extra challenges. Jonathan Martin explains how one program is helping first-time buyers navigate the process as part of his Affording Atlanta series. Jonathan, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Glad to see you as always, Chesley.
All right, what kind of barriers are we talking about here when it comes to Latino families?
Well, Chesley, buying a home just for anyone can be intimidating when you're starting out the process, but this is Hispanic Heritage Month, so we are focusing on Latino families today. And some of the challenges can really include things like language barriers, bias, and racism. We also talked to some experts who say it can include restrictive underwriting, high savings, the lack of credit history, or also in some cases the lack of, history when it comes to credit or documented financial history to qualify for a mortgage, and even a lack of knowledge, because for many Latino families, this may be the first time, they may be the first in their families, the first generation to ever own a home.
You spoke with a young homeowner. What made her story stand out?
Yeah, I spoke with a lady named Nathalie Hernandez. She's only 26 years old, recently bought a home, a Mexican immigrant, and she told me she's been saving for years and actually didn't even think homeownership was something that was even possible, especially being an immigrant from Mexico, something she didn't even really have on her radar. But she did reach out with the help of some people that she knew to the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, a group known as NACA. And this is a nonprofit, Chesley, that helps first-time buyers navigate the often complicated process, and they do have an office here in Atlanta, and their focus really is on helping a lot of Black and brown communities with the home buying process.
How does the program work? Break it down for us.
Yeah, okay, so NACA, as I mentioned, they help home buyers by providing a below market interest rate and put that mortgage down with no down payment, which we know is a barrier for a lot of people, no closing costs or no PMI or private mortgage insurance. And as a part of this, they also offer counseling, so they make sure that you can afford the home. And the program focuses on the borrower's ability to pay rather than having a perfect credit score. And they also present a lot of their programs in Spanish, so they do reach out to many of these Latino communities.
Now, you have some recent numbers about Latino home ownership in Georgia. How do those numbers shape out?
Okay, so we looked at some recent census data, and despite challenges, we're finding that home ownership among the Latino population in Georgia, in Metro Atlanta, is actually growing. So here's what we found: about 55% of Hispanic and Latino households were owner-occupied this past year. So that is compared to 47% just 4 years ago. So it's gone up, a decent percentage. That's according to some recent U.S. Census data.
Okay, all right, sounds good. We're looking forward to that story. We want to hear more about it. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, for more resources to help you juggle expenses and save money, check out 11alive.com/money moves, sponsored by Delta Community Credit Union. You get everything you need to know right there. All right, the days are growing shorter and darkness lasts a little bit longer. Pedestrians are at greater risk, from high-speed corridors to poor lighting near bus stops. The numbers are heading in the wrong direction. Our Gridlock Guy, Doug Turnbull, joins us now to dig into some of this new study tracking what's behind the rise in these, I'm going to call them accidents that take place, or at least I guess people are losing their lives on some of these dark roads, right?
Yeah, for sure. And Chesley, honestly, I hate the word accident because that implies that things just happen. Mm-hmm. All right, they certainly are categorized as that by police and people that investigate them, but honestly, they're crashes. And of course, it's weird to call a car versus a person or a person on a bicycle a crash. But what's going on is we've seen, as traffic crashes have ebbed and flowed, pedestrian incidents have actually risen at a much higher rate. And I dug into a study, I know that you and I have talked about this. I dug into a study. Since 2009, there's been an 80% increase in pedestrian fatalities on United States roads and only a 13% increase in traffic fatalities since then. So think about it. While the numbers have gone up and down, it's actually been much worse for pedestrians, and there are a lot of reasons for that.
What would be the reason now? And we talked about it's getting darker, that kind of thing. It's probably harder to see. Is that this time of year, or is it just overall?
Well, I think that the studies have shown that pedestrians are something around 80% more likely to be hit, that 80 number again, but to be hit when it's dawn or dusk, no matter what the time of year is. And then now we have more dark hours, so just in theory, with especially a bunch of cars on the road, we're in the middle of the fall semester, and in theory, it would be more dangerous for them. But we've seen numbers over the years, regardless of time of year. There are a lot of people on foot and a lot of distracted drivers, and I think that plays into it.
I was going to ask you that. Is it more of a matter of the driving practices and behaviors, or is it more of the pedestrians?
So this is a controversial thing. All right, and I've written the Gridlock Guy column for 8 years, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now it's at 11alive.com as well. And I wrote an article one time about pedestrian safety being a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And the pedestrian advocacy crowd, or the urbanist crowd, really got upset with me. Mm-hmm. And they helped me actually reform my opinion about it and my take on that, because while it is a two-way street, pedestrians can walk distracted, can cross in the wrong places, can be erratic. Mm-hmm. They are much more likely to be hurt when hit by a car than the driver is. Mm-hmm. They're not protected by airbags and glass and all of that. And of course, there's the difference in speed. So I would argue that drivers have more safety, or more responsibility rather, because of that.
What made people most upset about what you had to say?
For just that, because they're like, hey, if you're saying that we have equal responsibility, we're the ones on foot, and we're more likely to get hurt.
Yeah. The laws are that the pedestrian has the right of way. Is that always the case?
So the pedestrian always has the right of way. We should always drive that way. But obviously there are times, and Rachel Cox Rosen and I have covered several pedestrian incidents in September, and at least 2 of the 4 times that I'm referencing in my column that'll be this Sunday on 11alive.com, at least 2 of the 4 times the pedestrians were at fault. Now there are times where drivers, of course, should just drive like and be deference to pedestrians, but they're not necessarily going to get a ticket if somebody crosses the wrong way in front of them. But that doesn't mean as drivers you should just assume, well, they were illegal. You should always be driving the way you'd want people to drive around you if you were on foot.
Yeah. What's going to make this change? What's going to take place, or what do you think has to take place to make us more aware? Either way.
Yeah, for sure. I really think we, as drivers, whether we're interacting with other cars or people, have to be less selfish and have to be more cognizant and have to be more patient. As Cheryl Pram, when she was in for you last week, we talked about patience and the same behavior around school buses because there's been a large increase in school bus crashes the last few years. Yeah. It's the same thing here. We are more distracted than ever. Compare those numbers to 2009 when iPhones and smartphones were new. But distraction is only one part of it. Patience too.
I'm going to give you a curveball here. Throw in a driverless car. We get more and more of those. Yeah. Do you think it's going to be safer?
Yeah, and to keep it real quick, driverless cars in the end will probably end up being safer. But as the bugs are getting worked out, everybody needs to be more careful around them in cars or on foot.
Absolutely. All right, Doug Thermal, our Gridlock Guy here joining us. Thanks for the insight.
Honored to be here, sir.
Appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. The federal government may be at a standstill, but the markets are still churning and keeping everybody guessing when this shutdown is going to come to a final end here. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. And Maribel, hello to you, first of all.
Hello, Chesley.
How are the markets doing so far this morning on the 8th day of the shutdown?
8th day. Well, we're mixed, Chesley. So a number of key inflation reports, though, paused right now due to the shutdown. So, you know what? Investors will be sorting through remarks by several Fed governors today for signals on where monetary policy may be heading. In terms of how that's moving the market this morning, as I said, we're a little bit mixed. Here at NASDAQ, we're up about 91 points, but the Dow is down 72, and the S&P is up 7 points, Chesley.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So, the rear view camera on a Toyota may not have your back. Explain that for us.
No, it may not. Toyota is recalling, Chesley, approximately 394,000 vehicles over a malfunction with the rear view camera. So the safety alert covers certain Tundra, a Tundra hybrid, and Sequoia models built between November of 2021 and July of this year. The company says the software in the 14-inch multimedia center display could show a distorted green image or even full blackout. You know, federal safety officials warn of an increased crash risk when the vehicle is backing up. Toyota will notify affected customers by the end of November to schedule a free software update. Full recall details can be found on Toyota's website under recalls. Listen, Chesley, old school rear view, that's where it's at. I got my first and only speeding ticket in high school, and I learned, taking that class they make you take, you have to drive with all your mirrors.
That's right.
Okay? You have to.
I still look back. I still put the arm up here and look over my shoulder. I still All right, so folks that are into Teslas may be happy this morning because they could save a little bit, but I understand investors are not as happy.
Not as happy, Chesley. So first of all, Tesla came through on its longtime promise to offer a more affordable version of its Model Y sedan on Tuesday. It also threw in a cheaper version of its Model 3 as well. The new standard Model 3 will be $5,500 cheaper than its premium counterpart, starting at just over $38,600. The standard Model Y drops to $5,000 to $41,600. They'll feature design changes like smaller touchscreens, cloth interiors, and reduced battery range. It will also take you a few seconds longer to go from 0 to 60. Now, Tesla shares fell in the news Tuesday after many investors appeared disappointed the cheaper price range wasn't more competitive. The company says both standard models will be available sometime in December or January. You got to wonder, Chesley, were those investors also thinking, listen, do people want to sacrifice that 0 to 60 when they need to pass that car?
Good point. Good point right there. All right, we understand that gold has hit a new record, right? Is that more of a
Gold
safe
prices,
haven?
Yeah,
is that more of a safe haven or trouble ahead?
Oh, It's a little bit of both, Chesley. So first off, gold prices hit an all-time high of $4,000 an ounce Tuesday. They're expected to keep climbing. So experts point to sizable central bank buying, increased demand for a gold-backed funds, a weaker dollar, and growing interest from retail investors. So gold tends to thrive during periods of economic uncertainty. It's considered a safer investment, if you will, sort of a hedge against inflation, with holders betting it will retain its value when prices rise. But gold's current trajectory comes with a warning by billionaire investor Ken Griffin. He told Bloomberg yesterday that the rise of gold as a safer asset than the U.S. dollar was, quote, really concerning. Goldman Sachs forecast this week that gold could reach $4,900 an ounce by the end of next year. Chesley, people thinking those gold bars they bought at Costco might be the best deal they got all year.
Man, I still have some chains and things from back in the day. Maybe it's time for me to melt that down a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah,
Scrap gold. Let's go.
I'm not wearing it, so I might as well just melt it down and maybe make a buck. All right, Maribel, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, folks. Yeah, I'm going to have to just melt that down a little bit, right? Or if you got some gold you're not using, call me. Don't go anywhere, folks. We got much more for you coming up after the break. Welcome back to the show. It's more than just a trail. It's one of the largest urban redevelopment projects in America. The Atlanta Beltline started as a grad student vision and now is linking neighborhoods, jobs, and green space. The Beltline is planned to circle Atlanta with 22 miles of light rail and trail connecting more than 45 neighborhoods across the city. Since the first trail opened, the Beltline corridor has attracted over $9 billion in private investments, reshaping everything from housing to retail. As of last year, the project has delivered 74% of the 2023 affordable housing target, helping to keep long-time residents close to opportunity. While that may sound very impressive, there's one group pushing leaders to finish what they started, calling for light rail that links every neighborhood and not just a few. Here from the Beltline Rail now is Chair Matthew Rowell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chesley.
All right, let's start. Morning to you. Let's start with explaining why light rail is so important to the Beltline.
So the Beltline is 22 miles, a loop, and light rail was always part of the vision from the very beginning. And that transit is what's needed to help us grow as a city. We upzoned the entire city, and now we've got density, and we've got people, and we can't extend the opportunity all the way around until we build the light rail all the way around. And we are ready to start on the east side, but now we're hearing from the mayor that he wants to change the priority to start somewhere else. That transit connected to MARTA gets people to jobs, people to work, people to school, people to recreation and shopping.
You're calling this, Matthew, you're calling this a make or break for the Beltline's full vision. What makes it so crucial right now?
Because we're so far behind already, and we're on the 10-yard line, really. Where with the designers, the final design contract issued a couple of years ago, we can have trains operating to Ponce City Market and in that zone where we've created 25,000 jobs in 3 years. And we need to do it everywhere else, and we need to use this project to pull us along with creating momentum for the entire loop. And what we saw from the mayor this week is great, but it's not an either or, it's a both and.
You called for a written budget commitment on this for this year. What does that look like in practical terms?
So the way that the Beltline has been funded is with something called a TAD, and that's up for renewal. And we've called for Atlanta Beltline Inc. and the city to put money towards the design of the transit on the south side in the rest of the TAD. That means this year, next year, and the remaining 3 years after that, so that we can be ready to start building down there as soon as possible.
Mayor Dickens has put $5.1 billion in neighborhood reinvestment initiative, which hits on housing and jobs. Does the Beltline rail fit into that vision?
It does. We saw that in the announcement this week. There's about 12 miles of light rail in the mayor's proposal with about $2 billion attached to it. But again, that is a longer term vision. It's going to take us 7 to 10 years to do what's in that plan. And in the meantime, we can build with money we already have, not depending on Washington, what we started out to do towards the east side, and give access to the largest opportunity zone in the city to everyone who can get to Peachtree Center, Marta.
Speaking of that money, right, we understand that the Beltline has already sparked more than $9 billion in private investments. How does finishing the loop ensure those gains don't just benefit certain zip codes?
Well, again, I think what's great about what the mayor is saying is there's a commitment to go beyond and to actually do the entire loop in the plan that was released by Atlanta Beltline Inc. in August. And the way you ensure that, Chesley, is you start building where you can and you make smart building choices. You go to places you know are going to be successful, where people want to go, need to go. And right now, that's the East Side Trail, because there is so much growth there. And we think that by connecting that to everything else and building the rest as soon as we can, that's the right recipe for success.
All right, we got about
a minute. Time to wait.
Gotcha. We got about a minute left. You said build it all. Let's connect Atlanta. No more excuses. So if the city were to act tomorrow, what would Atlanta look like 5 years from now with that full Beltline and rail in place?
Well, we'd have Peachtree Center to Ponce City Market trains going back and forth every 12 minutes. We would have construction starting on the south side about in a year from that point in 5 years, and we will start to be poised to connect our city with the light rail that has always been contemplated. That's what that would look like 5 years from now. If we don't build on the east side, we're still going to be drawing lines on paper 5 years from now. And we just can't afford to do that. We're growing too fast, and there's too much opportunity lost as we go. And it gets more expensive every year we wait.
Yeah. Realistically, when do you think things would begin?
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen before the election. And I think that in next year, when a new council is seated and there's some more pro-transit candidates on that council, we'll see a push again to get moving again. And if we do that, we can be through the rest of the design in another year and start building and be under construction midway through Mayor Dickens' second term.
Gotcha. All right. Matthew Rao, thanks so much for joining us and your insight today. Really appreciate it. All right. We're going to have another look at your forecast, plus my final take when we return, folks. Don't go anywhere. We're back right after this. All right, it's going to be one of those days, folks, where we have a little bit of wet weather early and then late. We'll start to see it clear out a little bit and temperatures begin to warm up. Now, keep in mind, we should be around 78 degrees for an afternoon high temperature this time of year. We'll hit that at noon, going up to the low 80s for highs today. Sort of a bonus, even though we started out with the rain. Clouds won't completely disappear, but they'll hang around, but we will get some sunshine in to help us boost that temperature up into the 80s. Now, a total difference for tomorrow. You're going to feel the difference tomorrow. If cold front comes through today, it's going to drop that high temperature down to 72 degrees. It will be breezy and cool tomorrow. We'll have the clouds in place. Only a few of us will get a sprinkle or two. That's about it. That's about it. Going to stay cool for Friday. Now, where you really will feel it is in the morning, down to about 53 degrees. We'll get up to 71 for an afternoon high. We're going to watch that temperature modify a bit as we head into the weekend. We're going to see temperatures heating up back to where we should be for this time of year by Sunday. We're going to hold on to the sunshine for Columbus Day Monday, 78 degrees for the high, and then back to the 80s again as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. All right, TikTok and other social media challenges can be fun, especially when it comes to those various dance moves that people are doing or challenges like that, or even when they raise money for charities. But when they become dangerous, that's really when they need to be banned. Stuff like subway surfing. Have you heard of that yet? Yeah, this is a New York Police Department video showing that dangerous activity of kids on top of the subway trains. Can you believe that? Recently, two young girls lost their lives. She was only 12 and 13 years old trying to complete this challenge. And there's an increasing number of kids doing the same thing, these similar challenges. The police department up there or the Metro Authority Department up there in New York City tried to get the social media to ban these videos that glamorize these challenges, but they're still getting out there. So that means, parents, it's time for us to show up. I know you want your children to have certain freedoms, but social media is proving that that's not one of them. All right, so we're going to have to get involved in what they're looking at and try to limit that access to these challenges that are threatening our kids' lives, okay? So now it's time to get in their business, folks. We don't need to be paying for funerals for children, all right? Try to make it a great day, folks. We'll be back tomorrow with another great show.